Well, we are back and we are live. Welcome back to the McGolf Shop. Jim McCleary, Most Award Certified Club Maker Club Fitter. Well, we are going to be talking about golf equipment, golf fittings, and I found one last thing for what's in my drawers. There we go. So it sounds good. We did a quick test. So we've upgraded just slightly for the live streams, and we're going off of a Blue Yeti. Alrighty, so here's something that you might see in that a Biltmore. There we go. A putter. Look at that bad boy. Putter with wooden shaft and an 8-up handle and crooked as a S curve. And I'm here to tell you that when people putt on it, that they putt well. They do. It's funny how the concentration just increases when they put that in their hands because it's such a foreign object, right? And they really, really are. They really concentrate, and they really make good strokes. It's really kind of funny, and it's very upright too, which would lead you to believe either the guys in the era were very short or actually leaned over it, right? So it's not too bad. So we got Matt, Rob, and Ninja Kid. All right. And yes, it is a new microphone. Just got delivered like a couple days ago. It's the Blue Yeti. And it's kind of funny because it really is blue. So that's not too bad. Hopefully it sounds very good. Dustin, what's going on? So kind of a recap from the previous videos. You guys saw my build. All right, took those guys out. Finally got one round in. And we went and played out by Wilmington at an Elks course with some buddies. And it worked. They were good. Now, some of the guys in the videos noticed that my gapping was off, and yeah, it was really off on a couple, and particularly the pitching wedge and the 5-iron. And I went and measured them, and sure enough, they were both weak. And so I strengthened them to where they needed to be, and they hit it good. They hit right where they were supposed to. And it was funny, what I was testing indoors actually worked out of doors. You know, it seemed like my shots were high. Had to clear a couple of trees with something. I had some room, and nice easy swings, and away it goes. So it was really, did really work really well. Now for kind of a something as a upgrade, you're going to see this coming out very shortly. I just got to finish just a little bit of videoing and I'm done, but those are done. See if I can, there you go. Mine showed up. You can notice those are left-handed, and all those letters right there. So I got 3 wedges. One's the family wedge, one's the golf wedge, and the other one is the military wedge. This is the family wedge, and that's got all the first letters of all of my immediate family. Robin, Travis, Shane, Kate, Becca, Watson, and Emerson. And I got some customized shafts, and I went with a red, white, and blue theme in that my family shaft is red, my golf shaft is white, and my service shaft, or the military service shaft, is corresponding grips in order to keep the red, white, and blue theme going. So it worked out pretty good. So test hit those, and amazingly, I am very, very surprised. I gained a little bit. So I think we're going to have a very, very good setup. So not too bad. So that's coming. And just so you guys know, I've been working on a Mizuno iron review, and I've done it twice now. And I was gonna compare the MP20 to the JPX Forge, and then compare the JPX Forge to the JPX Hot Metal, and go over the differences. And they were strikingly different, which is really cool. However, I just decided that it would be far better served if we just reviewed all three of them together, because the same topics were going to be covered, and it'll show you, and it really talks to the condition of quality of hit in a fitting, and then what loft will do, because we're always talking about, well, what if 2 degrees, what does that get you, right? And we'd always say, well, 2 degrees isn't too much. Well, 2 degrees can be quite a bit now. So that's very very cool. And you learn quite a bit. And I got to talk to Chris Vauchal, who's the Mizuno USA engineer, and he's basically your social media face for Mizuno. And I got to talk to him for an hour, and that will be all part of it. So we got two really good videos coming up. And then in the pipe is 2 driver reviews, another Mizuno, the ST line, and the Wilson launch pad. And I can tell you that if you guys are struggling with a fade, this is it. And not necessarily stock, though. I don't necessarily agree with they have a very, 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 very light shaft in it, and it's very long. In a lot of cases, I don't agree with that. I like them standard weight, let them swing it, make it shorter, and then that way you have your light total weight. But it does work. It gets the ball out in the air. It doesn't sound gross, and it actually, it's not going to be the longest driving club, but it's not. I don't see the far away, me and left-handed would be the left-hand side. I don't see that side of the fairway very often when it comes to the driver, because I'm more of a pull guy. And when I was hitting these, it was just this. It was just crazy. It was just this spot over into my right-hand side that was there. So it lends to the belief that their technology works. And I also got to talk to John Pergande, who is the head of R&D for Wilson in that one. So we have a lot that's coming up. So there you go. All right. So that gets it up there. So let me, we're going to do it differently. Robin's helping me in the background a little bit. So I see how we got Netherlands, we got Jersey. I had some friends in the Navy that were from Jersey, and the big joke was running around was, hey, what exit do you live off of? And I never really got that until I actually had to drive down Jersey on the way out, going back down to Florida. Then I got it. All righty. Really? We got another guy play with a guy who would putt with a 2-iron in the 70s. Yeah, I could see that. There we go. I got to ask, what's the red shaft? Okay, so here we go. And we're talking about the wedge. So the red shaft is an Acra wedge shaft. Okay, the Acra wedge shaft. This is a 90 grammer, and they do make a 125. And this is specifically a wedge shaft, and it is very stout. And it is weighted to kind of give you a head weight. So it is very, very good. And I was kind of experimenting with this one. I had when you see me testing the wedge shafts with the gray one, that's kind of what this was. They went with a different logoing, and they're since kind of found their way back around to it. But I just think this is cleaner looking. And I was using this, and this thing is really working out well. It's a parallel tip shaft, and so I had to ream these guys out, and so far it's working. So I didn't tip any of these of any of my wedges, because in the sand wedge and in the lob wedge, I don't use them as full swing clubs, so getting that little extra snap is okay. And this one will be a full swing club, but since it's the gap wedge that this was made to start there, so I was good to go. And yes, I did stamp that, Bobby. And I stamped the other ones, and as you'll see in the video, I was not very successful on one of them. I was trying to get I have an American flag stamp, and I thought I had it flat. No, I didn't. It was awful. But yeah, I stamped them. And I did a little Pirate Life. I got a skull and crossbone stamp too. That actually turned out. So we're in pretty good. Hey, we got California, Texas, Idaho, Ontario. Look at that, man. We're all over the place. Nice.
Okay, Dustin Howell wants to know whatever happened to Golfsmith, the club maker and club maker training company.
Okay. Where's that at? After Fire Convoy?
It's right above Fire Convoy.
Okay, so we got this one. Here we go, Dustin. Whatever to Golfsmith, the club maker training company. All right, so Golfsmith is basically defunct. Okay, they went out of business and they got bought out by somebody. Somebody bought them, and just bought them out. Just bought them to be buying them out, and never had any intention of restarting Golfsmith. And they bought them to get as one of those businesses that buys closing businesses and sells off their stuff. So they buy it at pennies of the dollar, and they turn around and sell them at dimes on the dollar. And that's what happened to them. Now, their club maker training went the way of the dodo as well. One of the guys, if we go back far enough, we know that Tom Wishon was there. He exited well in advance of the thing falling apart, which was good for him. And the other one that I'm well aware of is Jeff Sheets. He was involved in the design after Tom left, and good guy. And he's doing a lot of work with Swing Science, and he's helped designing their kind of stuff. And I believe he's still an independent in Texas. However, that's what his prime goal is. And I believe he's also doing, it's a Japanese forge company that's in league with him. It's not Enzo, but it's, they're in league with, it's another high-end forge company, and he's doing some stuff with them. But so all that stuff just kind of, and they had a club making group as well. It started out strong and kind of fizzled a little bit. And it didn't make it past that, which was unfortunate, because Golfsmith, that's how the brothers, the Carl brothers, actually got started, was selling golf club repair equipment out of their garage. And then they took it and they just went the other direction. So it's quite unfortunate. And that's what we did. All righty. So Bobby did one on stamping. If you look in the one at the last video, I think it was one of the Building My Clubs videos. I do talk about stamping and how to do it. It's in one of the sections, but I should probably be able to do that, because the one part I don't really show any of it is paint fill and how you can get paint fill. And I see these kids virtually kids that go around there and somehow mash a couple of letters into their wedges or whatever it is, and then they turn around and use tester's paint, and they're using nail file polish or whatever to clean it off, which in a pinch it could do that, but from a professional standpoint, no. And there are certain paints that you can use. I have found the paints that come in a jar that's just big enough, and it's for people that do pinstriping on cars. It's called One Step. And it's very durable. Once you got it all taken care of and ready to go, and it dries quickly. And so you can put on the paint, you wipe it off, or you can put on the paint and make sure that it's very filled in, let it dry for, 12 to 24 hours, and then take a very light sheet of acetone, or a light sheet with acetone on it, not soaking, but on it, and you just wipe it off, and it wipes clean, and it does a very, very good job. But yeah, we can do some more of that, because I really am kind of getting into it, so we should be okay. Hey, we got Sweden back in the house. Well done, man. Thank you for coming back.
Ryan Harper, just below Matt, at 5:40
Yep.
p.m. Does that help?
Dick's bottom. There you go. That was it. Dick's bottom, with no intention of doing that.
Is it absolutely imperative to use glass beads when reshafting?
Ah, here we go. Okay. Answer, Matt, tomorrow.
I did already.
Okay. Is it absolutely imperative to use glass beads when reshafting? The answer would that to be no. All right. And it's not necessarily There's guys that have used, what do you call it, sandblast grit has done that. Some stuff that the grit that you get off of sandpaper, people have done that. Glass beads is basically, you know, 2 or 3 on the list. But if you're just asking to fill the stuff in the epoxy in order to make sure that it's in there, particularly if you have a tight fit, no. What that? Good golly. The I had to get rid of a phone. The idea of glass beading is once you stir it up into the epoxy, is that those glass beads will find their way around the shaft and kind of center that shaft into the hosel. And the reason why that's important, you know, it's just another quality build concept. Now the other part is that you don't want to put too many shafting beads in there because you still have to have epoxy holding those two pieces together, right? And so if you put too much in there, it takes room of the epoxy. So when you have your epoxy all mixed up and ready to go, just give a light film across the top of it and then mix it in real good and you should be good to go. That was kind of how the way I was taught. You know, it was like a cooking class, just a pinch will do you, and basically that's been it. So there we go. All right, here we go. Boom. DE, I've seen this one. What is the best type of shaft tip weight to use on graphite shafts? So graphite. Okay, so the difference between, I should go get it. You want to get my my weight box, please? We'll do a show and tell. There are two different kinds of shaft weights. There's a steel shaft weight and a graphite shaft weight. And the graphite shaft weight is obvious. The graphite shafts have a smaller hole, obviously, and so they don't have a very large tip. So kind of we'll show you here. So that is a graphite shaft tip weight. Notice how it's got the shank that's in here, and then this is what goes on. This is what sits on the end of the graphite shaft. Now, and then and this would be a regular steel shaft weight, and this all goes in, and then this little bit sits on the end of the shaft. Now there are two kinds here. You can get a taper tip, and you can get a regular tip. What I find is I just buy the regular tips, and then when I get it started on the taper tip and I mash it down with a no bounce hammer with a little plastic end, get it on, and then just sand off the edges. Now, back to this guy. I'm going to figure out how to turn that thing off. So this guy right here, what happens is this normally goes up into the shaft because you're looking for this much weight, okay? And what the default on this, or the fault on this, is if you don't have all this either glued, if you don't have all this glued in, or if you don't have it. All right, that's enough. Hold on. Good Lord, they don't talk all day. There, hopefully that's done. All right. So this thing here we go. So what happens is this shank tends to break off in the shaft and creates a rattle. Now you can stop that by, what I do is I wrap tape around it and get it to where it fits in the hosel into the tip of the shaft very, very tightly, very tight, and then I glue it, and then that way it stays. So even if it does tend to break, it will be there. Now, if you notice, that's a pretty good sized chunk of weight at the bottom. And what you have to do is you got to compensate for that weight and that size by cutting off that much of the shaft in order to take place of it because of flex. Now, what you really have to be concerned about is hosel insertion. If you were working with like a Cobra or a short hosel, I would not recommend doing that because now there's not enough real tip section in there to hold the shaft. If you're in a normal hosel tip section, then yeah, it should be fine. You should be good to go. So that's what they do. Now, if you're looking for the other end of the spectrum, this is the lighter one right here, and it's all gauged by the little bit at the bottom. So, and if you're really interested, this is what, there you go, that's what I use. And I've got, this one over here is all the OEM ones that I've pulled out, and then up in here, up in this area, some of the Wishon ones that I've used because he has a really cool weighting system in some of his heads. So that's that one. All right, what else we got today? Let's see. All right, we're going back. All right. Online classes, not yet, Jeremiah. Sorry. All right. Here we go. What's this one? Your thoughts on the future of steel and golf irons? Graphite will become more and more popular eventually if steel irons will be phased out? Probably not. And the reason being is they're less expensive than graphite as a whole. And that's a big that is a huge cost saver when it comes to the cost of a set of irons, right? And so, the average, let's just say the average steel shaft would cost you and I, say, between $20 and $30. Well, when you buy hundreds upon hundreds, even thousands of it, that cost goes down dramatically, and they're not going to pay that kind of much. They may, I'm just throwing a number out, they may only pay half. They may even pay less. Who knows, depending on the sheer magnitude of the order. And that saves them money in the long run. And as long as it's in the right profile for their what they want to do for the club. Now, can graphite compete in that weight class? That's really the question. Can they? I don't know. But what we're seeing now is what is the most popular is 105, 110 gram is pretty much a good sweet spot for a lot of people. 105 to 110, yeah, that's a pretty good number. And then once you start hitting 100 grams and going lower, it becomes the realm of graphite. And the more weight you put on it, the stiffer it becomes. And so you got to kind of keep that's the mode of it. So unless for some reason there's some new way of making graphite makes it cheaper, I don't see it, because they're really getting, you see it in the driver shafts with the use of the epoxy that binds the graphite strands together. They're getting very, very good with that stuff, and then the quality of the graphite itself really changes feel, and it changes performance, and so that's a positive. But no, I don't see steel going away anytime soon.
If you go down a few from that one, Bean wants to know, have you ever used the fishing line for an emergency shim?
Here we go. Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. In fact, I used it today. What the fishing line? What I use on fishing line typically is on repairs, and much like I've had, in fact, I got two in there, where a golfer sent me. I think it was from California, as a matter of fact. I'm putting together no, that was another one. This one's Washington, so I'm pretty sure it's Washington. Anyway, he sent me the stuff to put together, and it was wobbly in there, but it wasn't big enough. It wasn't such a wobble that a shim wouldn't fit. And so you just need that little bit of room that needs to take that stuff out. And yeah, you put that in there. That used to be an old timer type thing. I guess that's me too now. But to just take up that hint of space, and it makes it fit in there nice and tight. And then you just take an X-Acto knife or a utility knife, and you just gently slice it off. extra so it doesn't stick out. But yeah, we have. Yeah, I'm the man. Thanks.
Okay, Travis K. Is there benefit of the TT handcrafted shafts other than looks?
All right. Is there any benefit of the TT handcrafted shafts other than the looks? So handcrafted is exactly what it stands for. Okay. True Temper had a bit of a shift, and the handcrafted kind of is still there, but it's more been shifted to what they call small batch. You'll see that little symbol where handcrafted used to be, and they call it small batch. And the small batches are actually made. They're made here in California, I believe, and it's either Memphis or California, but it's a very small plant, and they hand make these they're looking for a particular something that's in there, and if it's a little different than a standard whatever that is, then yeah, if it works for you. Now, I honestly I don't know the difference in price between maybe a handcrafted and a standard issue model. If you were, I would look at it like this: if you were playing for money, chances are it's well worth the effort because it's probably a little more solid. If you're a weekend type guy, probably not. That's where I would go with it. All right, let's see what Matt asked a question.
I answered it already.
You did?
I did. Go ahead and ask it and see if I gave the right answer.
All right, let's see. Can you pull out a long putter shaft and place it on another putter head? Yep. Now it would depend because the putter shaft peanut gallery's on me now. So it depends because you have the over the hosel, right, which is a shaft that goes over a peg, and that's over the hosel in the way that marries, and then you have the shafts that actually go into the head, and depending on, so if it's a 1-for-1, then yeah. If it's a one that's the over the hosel and it's got to fit inside the actual putter itself, then no, but sure. Dustin, did I see right that the graphite can run upwards of $100 a shaft in irons? Yeah, there's some very high end iron shafts out there for that. That's rarefied air type stuff, to be sure. Even you probably see what the $60 to $65 is a good average, with the upper end being in the 80s and 90s, and then above that 100. Because when you start doing that, you start talking, the Acura driver shaft in the I series starts at 125 and starts going up. So yeah, if it's the iron shaft, but yeah, regular graphite shafts in irons, yeah, when you get upwards, it's better be something special in my opinion. But yeah, you're there. Okay, what do we got here?
What type of wheel do you use?
Okay, what type of wheel do you use on your angle grinder, which cuts both steel and graphite shafts? Well, basically, if it's a 4.5 inch angle grinder wheel, and it's made by the size this way and the width, and it's a 1/8 inch width, and then the size of the arbor, and the size of the arbor of this thing is oddball. Normally you might see a half, 5/8, 3/4 kind of thing, and one of those three isn't like the other, and I've got that one. And so when I get down to 2, I've got to go back, and what I do is I keep the last one and I go hunt the manufacturer, because the person that gives them out changes. And then I'll go buy 2 or 3, but they tend to last quite a bit, even when doing steel shafts. And it's like anything else, like on a grinder, the closer you get to the middle, it tends to lose it faster. It's really kind of funny. All right. Here's a big one. Considering torque on driver shaft, is there a standard, or does each manufacturer use their own testing process? Let's see. Answer 1. Is there a standard? No. Does each manufacturer use their own testing process? Yes. And the answers really are can be different. So what you might say is what you would probably get to, and I'm going to close this down because I feel like I look like Kilroy. All right. So when it comes to torque, as a whole, the torque of the shaft is big. So when we say big, we mean big numbers, right? So 5 means more twisting and 4 means lower twisting, okay? And when you are in lighter weight shafts, bigger numbers. When you start getting heavier, smaller numbers. And that's just by design because there's just more stuff, right? And so torque is normally measured in foot-pounds, or that would be the first one. And then you got inch ounces. If you look at torque wrenches, right, that's how they're measured. Now, torque in a lot of cases when you do foot-pounds, obviously you put the shaft in a holder and you clamp down this arm that's a foot long. That's a foot long, and then you drop a 1 pound weight on it, and you see how much that thing torques in degrees, and that's where you get the number. Now, the trick is where we use this as an example. So most people would think that you would put it at the end of the shaft and you would torque it out in this neck of the woods. Well, some of them will do it here. Some may do it here. Some may actually do it at the bottom. Some may only go out with a 6-inch arm and use a 2 pound weight to get to the same spot. And then they generate this number for them so that it doesn't look like somebody else, so they don't have a comparison. But yeah, as far as torque goes on a shaft, torque is a component to think about. Okay, because it can help you close or keep open a club. Now, and that can go from manufacturer to manufacturer. The guys that really were big with that was UST. When we were tour dealers, tour spec dealers. They had a line, a VTS line, that would have a 3 or 4 torque values, and there was a black, which was the lowest, a white, which was the middle, and a red, which was the most testing, in the same weight and flex category. Now, when you go to flex them, they wouldn't be all identical numbers, but they would be in that stiff category, so that you were fitting a person that needed that weight and maybe a stiffer flex, and doing that. And that was kind of cool. Kind of a case in point. Had a guy that was a bodybuilder, and he had arms, this big around. He couldn't get the thing closed, and he always hit. But he swung really hard, but he could never get the club to close. Well, so what we did is we went. They had SXs and they had S's, SX, and X too. So we go to an SX club, but we went with the red designator, which had a lot of torque, and it would close the club face on him. Next thing you know, he's hitting straight shots. So yeah, it's something to consider for sure. All right, let's keep going down. We got.
We did torque, right?
Yep, Matt's asking one about Matt.
What about? No,
And Matt's asking about Matt. If you ever built a Matt Kuchar shaft on the arm length putter? No. In fact, I just had a guy call me and ask me if I could make turn a regular putter, one that was like a mallet putter, into a one length or an arm lock putter. And so the difference in arm locks versus regular putters is it has this tremendous amount of offset. And the reason why it has this tremendous amount of offset is because it also has very little loft. And when you run your arm out, you're running your arm out, and your arm is very forward. Your arm is very forward. In order for it to be very forward, this thing's got to be back, and it's a bit of a delay. And I just don't know anybody that's made an aftermarket shaft for that yet. The minute that happens, and the weight on the head's a little different as well. And the minute that happens, there's going to be a lot of people doing that. Now, again, in the past, I have seen these really big offsets. I don't think they were really thinking about that in the day, but because when they had them, it would shut the club. The guys wouldn't pay attention, and it would shut the face. And you really those things got to be basically like that. They got to be parallel, otherwise you never putt well with it. Here we go, Colin. Steel fiber shafts just got fitted 95 into Mizuno JPX 850 irons. They feel great. Rare here in England. Well, yeah, the 850s. If you had 850s and they fitted you into the steel fiber into them. I get it now. Yeah. So steel fiber is being played on tour. Steel fiber is a very, very nice shaft. If you guys have been paying attention to some of the goings on in the industry, True Temper actually bought steel fiber. Now, much like they bought Acra, there are three entities that are kind of working as a triangular kind of let's make better golf clubs. And these two guys between Acra, True Temper, and steel fiber have very specific specialities that makes the whole group stronger as a whole. But the guys at steel fiber, yeah, they're tough. I've actually hit steel fibers in some of the newer Epics from Callaway, and it just sends them flying. So yeah, especially if they work for you. And I'm all about 95 gram shafts. As a matter of fact, may not be steel fiber, but there you go, right? 95. Let's see if I can do it this way. Boom, right there. So yeah, I'm all for that stuff. Oh, here we go. Another one, Faulkner. Jim, what is the difference between UST Recoil 460s EX and the ZT9 iron shafts? Okay, the ZT9, let's go backwards. The ZT9 is for a guy that is a late releaser, right? Late releaser of the club, and I believe it gives the club a little bit more head weight, head feel, not necessarily the weight, but head feel for that. And you really got to let go. The EX, the 460 EX, personally, I did not like. But it was really, really good in hybrids, right? It was really good in hybrids. So the longer clubs, it never gained in popularity, but I got to think, when people were making those, the driving irons and that kind of stuff, that would have been an excellent shaft for that. But the 460, it just has a lot of this going on. And although the EX is supposed to be for extra something or another, but the weight differences are just different. But if I had my druthers between the two, I would be in the ZT9. All right. Oh, I like this one, Travis. One length irons. All right. That's like a chicken or egg question. All right. So one length irons. If let's classify this. If you're a student of the swing and you just want to do the one plane and be like Bryson DeChambeau, or you're just trying to simplify things, then one length is a very acceptable way to go. All right. And I was on YouTube, and Washawn has just released the EX1-NQ, something like that. Anyways, this long set of letters and a new one length iron set. In that new one length iron set, he goes from, I believe, a 5 iron and goes all the way into a lob wedge. All right. Now, the first complaint about that is, I'm going to hit my wedges too far and that kind of stuff. Well, I don't know necessarily about too far per se, but the length, when you're very close to the green and you're there, you might feel that it's too far away. And that's something to adapt to. That's not something that's going to be natural, particularly if you've been golfing quite some time. which brings, and then to finish that thought is that he's made some hybrids. He made a 4, 5, and 6 hybrid. Now, the cool thing about this is that there's a weighting structure in this head that allows you to make them to normal length if you wanted to. You can make them single length or normal length. And then to add to that, he's jumped the shark on this one, that he's created a fairway wood that they can be single length fairway woods as well. Not the same length as the iron, but making all the fairway woods the same length. Where the 3 iron might be, or the 3 wood could be somewhere between 40 and 41 inches. Now, just let that sink in for a minute. Imagine, if you will, having a 3, a 5, or a 7, or all 3, all the same length, and just pummel them, because most people hit the shorter one best, right? And being able to get that out there. So just another length, just different than your irons. And again, the same weighting kind of system so that you can make them longer if you're more traditional. Now, finishing that thought out is, if you're a traditionalist, chances are you're going to hate single length. You just can't wrap your head around it, because you want to just bust the 5 because it's too short, and you want to easy swing the pitching wedge because it's too long. You just can't wrap your head around it. Now, my experience is, when people have come here looking for single length, they're basically mentally prepared. And when I give them a test to see whether or not they can actually take on that challenge. And then if they do, then we make them the clubs. All these people I've done this for have seen lower scores. Okay, every one of them. And it's all because they just went around, they were happy as a clam because they didn't have all those swing thoughts going on there. And there you go. So that's the one length question.
24-hour epoxy better.
All right. All right, is 24-hour better than quick set? In my opinion, yes. Okay. So epoxies are rated in shear strength. And when you get quick set, the shear strength is actually lower in order for it to quick and get harder. So it gets harder quicker, and that shear strength is lower. Now, it's still a lot, right? But it's not as high as 24-hour. And you will see that the very, very quick set is used quite a bit on tour, but that's because they're changing clubs so frequently. It's a totally different environment than, say, you and I, where you're buying a set of clubs and you're not going through them like water, like a lot of the guys on tour very well may. Oh, I don't like this club. Can you change the shaft? Or I'm getting a new set of clubs. Can you put these things in? And oh, by the way, can I have it 5 minutes from now? And those are the kinds of pressures that those guys work under. Where we, the non-professional, are tending to keep them a little bit longer so that the 24-hour sets up better, acts better, and just has a higher shear strength. Now, I'll give you a club maker tip here. I wish I had one of those little controller panels where I go, tip number 1. All right. But so what I've done in the past is I made a small box, and I put a little 60-watt light bulb in it and made it so I could set my clubs in it, put a lid on it. I've since made a big ginormous locker. Matt's seen it. He knows what it looks like. And so they've had, and what you can do is you can let it go in there and set it in there for an hour, and it'll cut the drying time down. Now, it does impact that shear strength, but ever so slightly. And so it's always been a plus. It's been kind of a trick of the trade for a lot of people. But yeah, anytime that you can use the 24-hour epoxy, I would suggest that. Now, the quick set, if you're putting putters together, the quick set works really, really good, and I would recommend that wholeheartedly, because the putter doesn't take the torque or the stress or the pressure that the other clubs do. They don't hit into the ground unless you're mad. They don't, they're not full swings. So yeah, you could use that there without an issue. All right, what else we got here? Don't tell me I made it to the bottom. Oh, here we go. Dustin showed me out. Help me out there, bud. Is the Big Berthas the hardest hit clubs to reshaft? I have a set of the original Big Berthas. Oh, bore throughs. Yes. Then the answer is yeah. The bore throughs are always the hardest. Now, taking them apart and putting them back together, taking apart is a no brainer. They come apart just like any other club. However, that black oval that you see in the back end of it, that's called a tip pin, and that tip pin gets in there, and then you have to clean it off and make it look smooth. And it takes a couple different, one or two types of machines depending on what you've got on hand. And then when you put it back together, because you're going to heat this thing up, it's going to melt that pin a lot, and you got to pull that pin out and put a new pin in. And there's a trick of the trade for all that stuff. I mean, I grew up on that. We did irons and woods and all kinds of stuff, and that in some of them that they've got that crosshatch where you see where the shaft is segmented in like 5 different sections, and what that is that when it gets into the head, it does like this, and so they cut that shaft into this many pieces so that when it gets into the bottom of the shaft, it does like that, and then you clean it off, and you got to clean it, and there's shaft always sticking out, and you got to clean all that stuff off. So yeah, I mean they're hard, and it's mostly hard from the fact that the finishing technique is just, you can destroy a set of irons because you didn't do it right. They just look bad. Okay.
Go to the next one. What's the best way to compare shaft profiles? And someone says, great question, Dave.
All right, Dave, well done. Best way to compare shaft profiles between brands. Well, I will tell you there are at least 2 methods. One is a very basic butt, middle, tip section on frequency. And so you take a given weight, right? Pardon me. You take a given weight and put a frequency analyzer at a given length, and you twang it, and you write that number down, and you slide it in just so far to whatever your middle length is, twang it, write that number down, and you slide it down some more and get the tip section, twang it, write that number down. Whatever those numbers are, different people have different lengths that they want to deal with, and then you start doing that with all of them. All right, that's one. The other one is doing where I went up to GolfWorks, you'll see it, and it's where you apply a stress. You apply a stress on it, and what it is, it's the whole entire length, and then there's this stress monitor, and it rolls up and down the shaft, and if you can pick different lengths down the length of the shaft and write down that stress, of course, higher number means it's stiffer, lower number means it's more flexible. And then it's a little more precise in the numbering. It's what is it? It's called there's an older model where they used to have plans where you can make these, and it was more of a bending profile, and it worked a little differently than I just told you. And then there's more of an automated or even a very faster way of doing it. And it's called the Golf Shaft Auditor. I think it's called the Golf Shaft Auditor. You check out Golf Mechanic, and they will have something, and I believe they even have a profile, and it can do that. But there's all these different ways. So if you have a way, and some other guys have made homemade units. If you can figure out a way to apply a stress in given lengths along the shaft, and you can repeat that process over and over and over and over again, then you can compare shafts knowing full well that whatever your reading gives you, high being stiff, low being more flexible, then you can do that. There we go. Scott's asking a question. Should all your shafts in the golf bag be the same flex? No, not necessarily. All right. And the reason why I say that is when I do fittings as a whole, so when we do an iron fitting and we look at the particular iron and they swing at a certain speed, if you're a very confident iron player, you will swing at a given speed. And if you're not a competent, or not competent, confident, not a confident wood player, you will actually swing slower because of your confidence gets in the way, and you'll swing slower, thus meaning probably something a little more flexible. And the same can be true. You may not like your irons, and you may just love your woods and just step on it all day long. Because when I do my fittings, there's a given difference I'm looking for to see if you are swinging with your confidence in that particular setup. It's like Matt on here. He was very, very confident with his taller stuff, and we worked him into his irons. And then now, of course, he's a heck of a player anyway. But we got him to where he was swinging very good, and that's not uncommon. Okay, it's not uncommon to see either working either way. But I know that your confidence level is equal if I see the gap that I'm looking for. Here we go. Kyle, how often should loft lights be checked to ensure they don't need bent to back to what was fit? Okay. Two things. Cast clubs are harder than forged clubs, and then the amount of play that you do. So what I tell people is, if you're playing, say, 3 times a week, and you're playing forged clubs, which are traditionally softer and will move, and particularly if you're one of those guys that does when you're sitting there waiting, you have that nervous flick of the club and bounce it off the ground, right? And you're just waiting and you flick and bounce, and you don't put a lot of pressure on it, but after time, it can do that. But if you're playing about 3 times a week, and you're playing with forged clubs, and you're really interested in maintaining your set, I would try it no less than once every 6 months. All right. If you're playing with cast clubs, which are very hard, and you do that same amount, you could probably have them checked once a year and be fine. Now, if you're playing less frequently, like two days a week maybe, or even less, then that time can be expanded. Right? That time can be expanded. And without sounding too obvious, but if you're out there and you're swinging and you think you put on a good swing and that club didn't produce the distance or the direction that you wanted, and it did a couple of times in a round, then it'd be the good time to do that. Right after that.
How do you feel about SST Pure?
Got it. How do you feel about the SST Pure? Is it better or worse or no different from your process? Well, I've got to say that the SST process uses a computer, has a program. They have a lot of data behind them. Is a much, much bigger corporation than that I'll probably ever see because of the science behind it. And so better or worse, I think it's probably a tad more precise where it finds that line in order to give you, because it's finding the roundness of the shaft. And you see the printouts that they give you, it's based on a 360 curve, and then based on what they believe, they go, okay, this is the place to put the head. The funny part is, get this, the funny part is that they agree to put the head in the same orientation that I did, which was, it's not like they called me and asked me, said, hey Jim, what are you doing? So can we be the same? It wasn't even close. It was, I did this, and then I went and somebody sent me some pure shaft. Turns out we put them in the same spot. Now, so finding that mark is very, very cool. However, when it boils right down to it, you've got to mount that head in the exact right spot, and that's where flow comes from. You put the head in there, you mount on the laser, and once you get your line, that's the exact spot. You put the line on the back, and now you have an orientation to do that. When you get SST, they said this is the best place to put in the club at 12. Well, what kind of 12? What if you have a lot of offset? What if you don't have a lot of offset? You still have to go through that process, and I do that. And it's funny. Sometimes I find them at noon. Sometimes I find them at the 90 degrees. So it just depends on where you're going with that. But to find the actual balance or the best part of the shaft, yeah, I think they're better, because why wouldn't I? It's a computer with all kinds of digital technology in it, and I'm using bearings. All right, but putting it together, that's where the rubber meets the road. All right. Where are we at?
John Smith, any secret to repairing loose ferrules?
All right, I built my bag individual club separate brands.
Oh, I missed him.
All right, let's do him. I built my bag buying individual clubs, seven different brands, different shafts, different weights. It may not be common, but I get my yardages. So we talked about this last week, I believe, in the day, right? Now we're talking about in the day and horse-drawn carriages and the advent of the car, back when the golf was was leaving the elite status and for everybody. The pro golfer, the better golfer, would virtually go to the factory, and they would have this big wooden barrel of a particular club, a mashie, a niblick, or whatever it was, and they'd grab handfuls of them, and they'd virtually take them out to the driving range and hit to see which one, because it was the wooden shafts that were the more of the defining difference in the club, and they would hit them until they would get what they would find the one, and then they put that in the bag, and then they would go to the next barrel for the next club, and they'd go through that same process and pick them out until they found what they want. And the biggest story, this is not an uncommon story, it's the Bobby Jones story, and he would do that. And he said there was always one club in his bag that he did not like, and they finally were able to frequency check the set, and these things were all in line except for the one club he didn't like. So you're talking about a guy that was extraordinarily gifted, but again, there it is. And if you get your yardages and you're working on it, then hey, hoorah. And we got Denmark. What do you say, man? Thank you for coming in. So here we go with the international stuff, right? I just think that, for those of you that have never made it across the pond, for those in the U.S. never made it across the pond, golf in the European area, now my experience is Ireland and Scotland, is a completely different vibe, and it is awesome. Right, and it is a pure love of the game, the pure, the rules, the playing, and the whole 9 yards, the walking, the whole 9 yards. It is so cool, and it's really, you have no idea what you're missing until you go out there and you do that, and you see the pure just reverence to playing the game, and it is very, very cool, I have to admit. All right, here we go, John. Any secret to repairing loose ferrules that have slid up the shaft is just a simple back down and reglue. Pretty much that's what it is, bud. The thing to prevent them from coming back up ever again is the crazy glue, right? Just a drop, just one little teeny bitty drop. That Gorilla Glue will do it too. The crazy glue, just one drop though. You don't need to go all the way around, otherwise it's never coming off. Which you kind of get where you want it, but if you're ever going to do anything in the future, that's no. But just one drop, and what I take is I get the club in a vise, or in one of those rubber clamps that set in the vise, and then what you do is you put the shaft in there and just barely tighten it down and get the shaft. Get the shaft, and what you do is you get the ferrule on that side, and you use that as the push. And you just push it back down if it's a little tough, and then just let it set, and you should be good to go. What else we got here? Where, Butch? All right. Okay, Butch. Do you final weigh each club? If so, what are the weight gaps between the clubs? I do. When we custom build clubs, we do a final spec sheet. And I don't have one just near me, otherwise I'd pull it out for you, but it's a handmade sheet that we created here, and it's length, loft, lie, flex, swing weight, total weight, grip size, and the types of the head that we use and the shaft that we use. And yeah, it's the total weights. It's funny because it can vary if you're not, because of the amount of tape that you use, the amount of glue that you put on, right? And assuming everything else is the same. But on average, I see anywhere between 4 and 7 grams in the gaps. I know, and you can be Oh, and how far that if you don't get the grip on all the way, as far as that's with the swing weights. And the reason why I say that is I compare the total weights to the swing weights. And so when I do the total weights, it gives me an idea what's going to happen to the swing weights. And it's funny how when we're talking about total weights, which basically at this point is going to reside in the shaft, a fluctuation of a couple grams either way really doesn't impact the swing weight. So it's pretty cool. But if everything's in a perfect world, Butch, 7. But I would, if you see something along the lines between 4, okay. And there you go. All right. Well,
Constant weight iron shafts with 2 LJ.
here we go. Here we go. Thoughts on constant weight irons or ascending or descending weights? Well, if a constant weight was always the standard, okay? It was the standard. That was the taper tip, always the same. And that was the kind of, it was transmitting a feel that the pros, I don't know necessarily like, but they got used to, and then that became the standard. Ascending weights or descending weights, I can see the idea of an ascending weight, meaning you start at a slightly lighter. And when we talk about it, it's not grossly different. What it is, it's slightly lighter at the top end, and then heavier at the bottom end. And I can see that in that. The idea of the taller iron swinging faster and getting through the ball, where that the lower iron you just want to get down and through, and you get up there. I can see that, and it has its place. Is it for every single person on the planet? No. Just like constant weight's not. I mean, constant weight, and you're talking even in parallel tip or even taper tip, that's kind of constant weighting. That's kind of another chicken or egg discussion. However, speaking of that, well, let me get through this. And so it depends on, again, it's on the player. If they say that they're struggling in short game, then maybe a slightly heavier weight would be that way to go. Again, on the swing type. If you have somebody that's just a very consistent golfer, then the constant weight would probably be it, because extra weights will probably freak them out. Okay. Now, kind of going on here, guys, I've gotten in contact with a couple of guys, and one of them is Victor Affable for VA Composites. And I can either do a Zoom meeting with him and then record it and tell you guys, or quite possibly do a live stream and have him bring him on here. Put down in the show notes if you guys are still hanging around what you think. Would you like to see him here, or me just answering questions like we've been doing? Or you want to see some folks come on, and then I'll just put it in a video. All right. Next one. That's a good question, but I get it every once in a while. I get a rogue email from the guys that they're getting back into it, and they're getting ready to do it, and they're okay. And it's good. If you go to their website, I believe you're going to see you see that they've got new artwork on their shafts, and the artwork looks pretty cool. And he's really hot and heavy on this super taper iron shaft. And there might be something to it, maybe not. I don't know. And because I haven't really hit it. But as far as full on gotten something out there, when he exited with GolfWorks, that was pretty much the last we've seen him out in corporate life, basically. So hopefully Robin's doing well, and he gets it, and he gets all his people in line where he needs them in order to make this a go, because it was quite the popular shaft, and mostly because of the price comparison, the pricing for it, for performance as well. But I fully suspect that you'll see that if he comes back out, that the numbers will be a little higher. All right. Faz. Here we go. All right, been playing around with weights on my TM Spider putter, adding weight to the head and counterbalance on the grip, trying and failing to achieve a momentum type swing. Any ideas on how to achieve it? All right. Well, number one, Faz, the number one thing is you got to make sure you got the right length in your putter. If you're not very consistent with your putter to begin with, it's not going to happen if you're standing too tall or too small, or you're doing all these things. That's number one. Number two is making sure that the grip is going to be the right size for your grip. And then if you're talking about that, what we're talking about is tempo, right? Trying to bring that tempo back. And a lot of times what you'll find is specifically with the spider, because it does have a few places to put weight in the head, and then you can put weights in the back or back weight, and you got to, the GolfWorks sells them, or the Balance Certified folks. That's what we've been using for years. You get into that, and what we used to do is we would start with a small weight and then get up the big weight until the performance fell off, and it was the heaviest one that you could use before the performance fell off. And then you would have that. It would actually allow you to do that. So I would take out all that added stuff and then try and just add it into the butt part of the grip first. And then when you get to a point where you're just really doing well, and then you can add just maybe a little bit of weight to suit your feel. And that's where I would go. Okay. Okay, guys, we've made it down to the bottom, and we've made it for a full hour. Well done. Again, from around the world. All right, guys, I thank you for the participation. Again, just tell me what you think on the videos. It looks like we're going to still be doing this around the world and around the nation. So let's do that. Let's do this again next Monday. And we'll keep talking about it, and maybe we can do a little upgrade on this. And as always, guys, let's see your scores. Go low.